Well, hey, it's 5 p.m. on Monday, and we are so glad that you're with us here for the Whole Care Community Check-in. This is my wife, Becky, who joins me every time.
Hello, everybody. We're glad that you're joining us for our Whole Care Check-in, and just a reminder that you are a complex and beautifully made person with a mind, heart, body, and soul, and all of it matters during this time. And so we just want to take a moment to tune in with our people and say, we see you, we love you, and just check in on how everybody's doing.
We have some guests, right?
We do. We're so excited to be joined by some faces that are familiar to you. We've, of course, got Thomas Thompson, our spiritual formations pastor, with us. We're glad you're here. We've got Molly Wendell, who is our children's director. And then we have Katie Garrett. I don't know what corner she's in for you, but she just waved. And Katie is over all of our groups and spiritual direction for groups. So thank you so much for joining us. And we're just checking in with everybody today.
Yeah, so here's what we were hoping to talk about today. And it's a question for each of you all. And it kind of goes with something I've been noticing. I think this is a moment, especially probably this week, next week, where we're starting to see a lot of fear and outrage. And there's starting to be multiple sides on this whole coronavirus, stay-at-home order, all this sort of stuff. And so you see people who have fear and outrage at others who are not doing enough. You see people who have fear and outrage at the government who's overstepping, and you're starting to hear the rhetoric be dialed up, and it's happening all over social media. I was reading recently in Matthew 9 and 10, and I saw something in Jesus that is so different from the fear and outrage that we see in our culture. There's this moment where it talks about he's teaching and he's healing and he's doing all this stuff, and it says that he looked on the crowds and he was moved with compassion because they saw them as harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And then the next thing he does is he tells his disciples to pray that God would send workers into the harvest to do good, to heal people, to spread the gospel, to advance the kingdom. And then he actually sends the disciples out. And what struck me about that is just like in our day, Jesus probably had people who were afraid, who were outraged. But instead of engaging in that, he engaged with empathy and he engaged with purpose. There was something so special about what he saw when he looked at struggling people. And I think that's how we need to both receive his love, that he sees our struggle with empathy, and he invites us into purpose. But we also as leaders need to do that same thing. And that's what we want to be about as a church, of course. And that really is the question that kind of we wanted to ask you all today. I know that each of you are people of empathy and purpose, but I also know it doesn't just happen. There's some things that we have to embrace about it. And so that's kind of the question.
It's good. So Katie, will you start and just maybe talk a little bit about what are the ways that you are moving toward compassion and away from fear during this point of time?
Sure. Yeah. I think like a lot of us, I've had some extra time to contemplate things or be a little bit introspective. And like almost anything that I mull over or am thinking about it, this has come from a book that I read recently. And it's this quote that has just stuck with me. And to paraphrase, it said something like, to understand people with lives that are fundamentally different from your own, you just have to open your heart. And for me, my lifelong personality has been to be right and to do right. And so when other people are reacting or emoting in a way that I deem as different than my own, that automatically feels like, oh, it's wrong. And so I've really been trying to put aside some absolutes and just really look into where people are coming from at their heart. I think that people's feelings and emotions are not right or wrong. People's feelings and emotions just are. And so if I can try to press in more intentionally to where people are coming from at their heart, then I can put aside whether I agree with them. And it's easier to have kind of an empathic feeling towards people when I'm just dealing with their emotions that are true for them and that they're having.
Great. That's good. Thank you so much, Katie. How about you, Thomas? Same question. How are you moving toward compassion or empathy and away from fear?
Our family has a card game called Munchkin that we play, and it is a game that causes a fight every time we play it. So it's kind of like we're getting inoculated against compassion with that. No, I'm just kidding. I was thinking about this. I think it's hard to give when your tank is empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of us right now, our tanks are kind of empty, or they're feeling like they're going to be empty, or we're fearful about that. And so I've been thinking about to move towards empathy. I want to really fill my own tank, and then I'll have more to give. And I was thinking about 3 ways of that. One, over the last couple of years, I've really been thinking a lot more about gratitude, and especially some of that comes from the works of Saint Ignatius and some stuff there. But he kind of had this thought that when you begin with gratitude, it really puts you in a position to give towards others because you're acknowledging what you've received. And it puts you in a place where you realize, I've received something and now I can give. And so we've been trying to practice that a little bit. Like just at family dinner times, we open with, what are you grateful for today? Just something to be reminded of. And this is a hard season to maybe be grateful for a lot of things, but there's always something to kind of move towards. So where am I being grateful? I think a second thing that, as I think about my tank, is I want to always return to the Sabbath. And I don't know what it's like for most of our congregation, but it seems like a lot of the hours have blurred and a lot of the normal rhythms have blurred. And now we're working at night, now we're working in the morning. And so it's easy to let Sabbath time slip away. And so just finding time to shut off screens. A few Sundays ago after the church service, we shut off the TV, and then I just thought, I'm shutting off all screens for the rest of the day. And I realized it was the first time, probably in 3 or 4 weeks, that I hadn't gone more than a few hours without checking some kind of email or what's the latest update or what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that just continued to create more fear and anxiety and less empathy for others. And that day of just shutting off for the day, I felt like it refueled my tank, and I was more ready to be slow with people. And so where are we shutting off? That'd be my second question. And then the last thing is just the word grace. It hit me yesterday. 2 people in our family were having a fight, and I'm not going to point out who they were, but neither one of them was me. Okay. So, and this fight was escalating, and I was listening to it, and I finally felt like, okay, I need to step in and just say something. And what I recognized was, this fight is not just about this one little thing about who's going to use this thing next. There's something bigger going on here. And I said to these 2 people, hey, I want to just acknowledge that we're in a really tough situation. And you 2 are normally used to having to deal with each other for just 2 or 3 hours a day. And now you're dealing with each other all day long. And there's a lot of pressure, and so I just want to recognize and give you some grace that it's okay that you're fighting, and it's okay that there's friction, but let's don't turn on each other. Let's just acknowledge that we're in something bigger than us, and we need grace more than ever. And so I guess the question is, where am I recognizing and then naming our need for grace?
Yes.
So we're trying to go out through the day just going, hey, we need some grace today. We recognize that, we name that. So just some ways that I think being aware of what your tank is like so that you are more prepared and filled to give to others.
That's so good. I love that thought of just asking for that grace. I had a day last week where I felt fine the day before, and then all of a sudden I just got hit with some sadness, and Jonathan came home, and I'm in the basement teary-eyed with a bunch of boxes, and he's like, what's happening? But at that time, I did have the awareness of, I'm just struggling today. I'm low. I feel sad, and I'm not sure exactly what it's about. But I think that helps when the people living together, when you can reach out and just say, I think I'm needing some of that grace, to just acknowledge, name it, and then ask for what you need. It's hard to do both of those steps, both acknowledging the need and then being bold enough to say it. So thank you for sharing that Those are great.
Molly, how about you? What this movement away from fear and outrage towards empathy and purpose? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, I wish I went first.
Oh.
Theirs were so good, you guys. That encouraged my heart today. It was deep. It was good stuff. Mine is a bit more, excuse me, it's a bit more practical. I think. I feel like in the current season that we're in, of just so much of our communication is done via the screen, whether that's texting or emailing or a Zoom call like this, or virtual gatherings of sorts. Like, it's all done this way, and I just can feel bombarded by that a little bit and overwhelmed, and it's just not a regular way of communicating outside of this season. And so I feel like I've tried to look for ways that I can be a little bit more intentional about connecting with people. And so for me, I've just tried to create a little bit of space and time in the morning to actually kind of lean into an archaic way of communicating, which is like the old fashioned letter. And so there's nothing like really special about these little notes, but just like a little hello to like maybe some of our kids in our kids ministry, or people in my life that I just want to just call out something really good, or just a bit of encouragement. I just feel like there's been an opportunity to kind of change the pace in communicating. And it's something that I feel like is building just more purposeful connection, but also building like just room for empathy, just because I'm not being maybe as overwhelmed or bombarded by communicating in like mediums like this. So it's something that I hope that when there's less of this quarantine time and kind of our lives are fuller again, I hope it's a practice that I will continue. I know like Peyton Manning and Mr. Rogers, like that was something that they always did. And so that's, man, if I could be more like them, then I mean, yeah, then I will.
I like that you're taking your own mode of communication and saying, this is going to be my stamp of how I'm going to be the person God's wired me to be. And knowing you personally, Molly, you are probably singularly the most encouraging person I've ever met. I've told Jonathan, I'm like, when I'm feeling low, I just need more Molly. Like, you just are such an intentional encourager, and you call out things in people that most people don't notice or see. I value that so much in you. So I hope to get one of those letters.
Now.
I know.
I'm on it right now.
Take your time. Take your time.
I appreciate those thoughts, you guys. And I just think this is what Jesus is doing when he looks at us. He sees that we are harassed and helpless. He sees us with empathy. He has God's purpose in our lives. But I do think he's inviting us into that. And the intentionality, I guess, just that you all are talking about is so helpful. So thank you for just sharing your heart with that.
That's good.
What we do every time we do the Whole Care Check-In is we have a recommendation for you. And today I'm so excited about today's recommendation because I have been hearing about this app called House Party. And the rumor mill tells me that Molly, you and Caitlin are using this app, and it is well, just tell me what is this app? I'm gonna share the screenshot. What is House Party? Tell us about that.
Well, Katie, I'll lead us off. Is that cool? It's honestly, it's the easiest thing. It's very similar to a Zoom call like this, or like a FaceTime with multiple people. But the idea is that you're playing games with one another on screen like this. And it has built-in games, so you don't have to think of stuff to do. We've done it.
Give me an example. What's a game it has?
So it has something called Chips and Guacamole, which is kind of like an apples to apples game. So if you've played apples to apples, so you're given a card, one person's given a card, and you have to kind of like assume what that person might choose. And so you're trying to match that up.
Okay.
What are some other games, Katie?
Yeah, so my favorite is trivia because I feel like I know a lot of random things that have no purpose in my real life, but when it's a trivia, then I win a lot. So each person, then the question comes on and you have to lock in your answer, and then it will say who got it right and who got it wrong. And then it does a leaderboard throughout, so you can know where you stack up against your friends or family.
So
Fun.
cool. So I love that idea. And I think that's something also, it probably was in the original Greek, it says when Jesus saw the crowds, he thought he could beat them at like board games and things like that. That's an important part of community and connection, right? So I love it. Well, hey, thank you for being with us today for this check-in. And Becky, will you just pray a prayer of blessing over these people, over our entire community?
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you, be gracious unto you, and leave you peace.
Amen. And I want to remind you, tomorrow you can see Molly with the kids ministry check-in. Excited about that. And then Wednesday, we're going to come back with the whole care community check-in. It's going to be ladies night again. So I won't be there. But then Friday is going to be guys night. So I'll be there for that one. Also Wednesday is the student ministry check-in. And then this next Sunday, we're going to be worshiping live at 9 and 10:30. All sorts of resources on our website to give, to get prayer, all that sort of stuff. So make sure to check that out. In the meantime, we really want to encourage you that God made you a whole person and that your life is not on hold. And so during this season, however that means for you, he is calling you to press into everything he's created you to be. So we want to encourage you to do that. We're praying for you. I love you, people. I'll see you soon.